The Legions of Athena, Chapter 9. Another week had passed. Soon it was the eve of the festival. Maximus was training alone in the garden. Since the day he had contested against Rex, he had been spending most of his time training alone. He avoided Rex and the others deliberately, because he didn't want them to ask him any more questions. Questions to which he did not know the answer. The voice hadn't responded either. Every night, before he slept, he had tried contacting it, and each time he had been ignored. He was hoping to talk to Achilles about it, but for someone who was so keen on him entering the tournament, he wasn't really around to train him. In the past week, he had seen Achilles only once, for hardly 5 minutes to top it off. He had come by the day after the sparring session, and instructed him to continue with his training on his own. All he said was that something had come up, and that he would be leaving the city again. He said that he would return only by tomorrow, on the day the festival commenced. Maximus tried to focus all his energy into his training. This was proving to be hard, when he realized that the more he trained, the more he could confirm that something was different. He had tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination. He tried to believe that he had won against Rex due to the merits of his training alone. He tried to prove that by lifting weights, but he had definitely gotten stronger. He could lift a lot more than he had ever done in the army. But the real change he felt was that he wasn't getting tired. No matter how hard he trained or how much he sweated, he always seemed to have enough strength to keep going. It was as if his body had an unlimited supply of adrenaline running in him. He would be lying if he said he wasn't a tad excited by this. He had never felt stronger. He had never been faster or in better shape for that matter. But it still worried him. He knew that if a deal seemed too good true, then it probably wasn't. So he was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. There had to be a catch. He had stopped using his blade and shifted to a regular sword for his training. He had done it to see if his newfound strength only came with his blade, but he hadn't touched his blade in the previous 3 days. Yet there was no difference. The worst thing was, a part of him knew that this had nothing to do with the blade or the voice. Somehow the things the voice had revealed about his lineage kept coming back to him. But the only way he could confirm this was by talking to the stupid voice in his head, he thought to himself angrily, as he kept slashing away in the open garden. He seemed to have lost his concentration a bit there, as one of his strikes cut down a nearby shrub in half. He knew his mind was not focused on his training. Achilles had once told him, "There is no room for emotions in battle, only instinct." According to Achilles, the training was to make his blade a part of him, a part of his instinct. Getting distracted now would not help him in tomorrow's contest. Hedger had managed to find out the sequence of events of the festival. The Owlet's tournament would be held the day after the opening ceremony. Hedger and the others promised that they would help in any way that they could. However, Maximus decided it would be best to shut them out for now. He knew that they were worried for him, but somehow he wanted to be alone right now. He sat down on a nearby bench and drank some water to cool himself down. That's when he saw that a man was standing near a pillar next to the entrance of the garden, observing him. This was no longer unusual for him. In the past few days, quite a few passers-by had stopped to watch him train. Some had even went out of their way to shout insults at him, all of which he ignored. Even Elisha herself had come with her entourage just to stare at him with loathing, but he was not bothered. Whatever he wanted to say could be said at the tournament with his blade. He expected the man near the pillar to move away after a few minutes. Instead, he began walking towards him. The man started limping towards him. That's when he realized that he had seen this man before at the castle's infirmary. He was the other patient who had shared the sickbay with Maximus. The man seemed to have been restored to health since he had last seen him. He had fewer bandages covering him than before, but he was still limping and he looked extremely tired. The dark circles below his eyes suggested that he hadn't slept well for a while now. He came up to Maximus and said, "You are Maximus, correct? The challenger entering the tournament tomorrow." Maximus nodded to this. The man continued, "I am Commander Leos, the leader of the 4th Division of Athena. It is my Tyro you are replacing." Maximus was not expecting this, and he was at a complete loss as to what to say. "I'm sorry for your loss," Maximus said. "Don't be. It was war. I've lost soldiers before. Liam, that was his name. Bless his soul, was a great soldier and student, but even the greatest fall in battle. Sadly, I did not come here to mourn his passing." "What is it that you want then? Do you disapprove of me entering the tournament?" Maximus asked. Leos gave him a cheerless smile and replied, "Each of the 8 legions have specific roles within the army. The function of the 4th Division is the vanguard. This means that it's me and my men that hold the front line. Do you really think I have time to worry about some stupid tournament?" Maximus fell silent. He knew it was best not to answer. "No, I am here because of another reason," Leos continued. "Achilles has taken you under his wing, correct? That means he must have an enormous amount of trust in you." He then pulled a sealed envelope and handed it over to Maximus and directed, "Just make sure he gets this. I will be returning to the front lines in the evening." Maximus took the envelope from him and nodded. "But why? Hasn't Mars agreed to a ceasefire?" Maximus asked. "You are a Martian, are you not? You know how Ares operates. Are you naive enough to believe that someone like him will not be preparing for a counterattack the first chance he gets? With these words, Commander Leos began limping away, leaving Maximus alone with his thoughts again. Night fell and Maximus was alone in his room again. He came back late on purpose after training to avoid his friends. He went straight to his room and shut the door. It was late at night, and Maximus was still tossing and turning. The thoughts of the tournament just kept him awake. The fact that he was not tired after such a rigorous workout wasn't helping either. Usually after training for so long, he would be out cold for hours, no matter what he was worried about. But now, thanks to his monstrous endurance, even that was impossible. As he lay there awake staring at the ceiling, his worry slowly started to turn to anger. He was annoyed by the way things were going. The surge of confidence he felt in fighting the Tyros had vanished a couple of days after his little scuffle with them. He was even more ticked off because something he could not explain was happening to his body. The only person who could help, his personal roommate in his skull, was now non-existent. Maximus shrugged at this thought. What if the voice really was a figment of his imagination? What if he was going crazy? With the unnatural strength and a voice in his dreams, he sure sounded crazy. No, that couldn't be, he told himself. The visions he received were spot on. There was no way he imagined that Ares' throne room and his conversation with his boss. Still, the voice hadn't spoken for so long, he began to wonder if he had disappeared for good, like Achilles had. That was the thing that angered him the most, his master Achilles. The man who was so keen on him entering this stupid tournament had wandered off, leaving him to train on his own. Having Achilles as his master was the only real advantage he had against the Tyros, a great deal of help that it did in the end. He was so angry at him. He had just left him at his time of need, using him as a messenger boy. His thoughts finally rested on the letter Leos had given him. He hadn't opened it, but all through the evening it preyed on his mind. He was curious as to what it contained. He wondered if it explained why Achilles was missing. He knew it would be wrong, but then again the commander had not specifically forbidden him from reading it either. He knew it was a weak loophole, but he was really fed up with not getting any answers. He lay awake for another hour or so till curiosity finally got the better of him. He ripped open the envelope and decided to deal with Achilles when it came to that. After all, his master had left him high and dry right before the tournament. This felt like a little payback. There was only a single piece of paper inside, a handwritten letter that said, Achilles, I have looked into the situation we discussed earlier. It seems your instincts hold true. My men report that none of Mars's forces are present at the front line. Rather, as you surmised, reports show that the forces have not re-entered Mars either. It seems, as we feared, Ares does not seem too keen on honoring his word regarding the truce. It is most likely that they are still within the outskirts of Minervian territory biding their time. My scouts cannot provide more information as heavy storms plague these regions now, leaving most of our scanners useless. In any case, I am departing to the front lines to get a better grasp of the situation. May the gods be with us. Destroy this letter. Leos. Just as Maximus finished reading the letter, bam! He felt a huge force hit him from nowhere, and he was unconscious on the floor. Maximus awoke again almost instantly, and his first instinct was to reach for his sword, but he couldn't find it. In fact, he was not even in room anymore. He was in a completely dark place. A place he'd been in, before in his dreams. He wasn't worried anymore, but he was a bit annoyed at the unexpected nap he was made to take. So you finally decided to show up then? He shouted. Lower your voice, child, the voice said. As always, the words seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. You're a bit late, you know. I've been calling out every day, Max said. Yes, your pitiful worries about your own strength. Sadly, I have no time for that, the voice replied. Maximus was insulted by this. Pitiful? He had no idea what was happening to himself, and he had the right to be worried, but the voice found it pitiful. Now listen here, you. Maximus couldn't think of a proper insult to place there. After all, what do you call something that's just a sound? Just listen, Maximus finished angrily. He had never regretted getting angry before, but now he did. The darkness quickly changed to a blinding light. A flash so strong he shut his eyes with pain. A flash so strong he was thrown back. He was thrown back by a light? That didn't even make sense. When he reopened his eyes, it was complete darkness again, and he was on the floor. Not that he could see the floor. He got back to his feet and didn't seem hurt, but his eyes still stung. Now you listen, boy, the voice said. I already know what you wish to ask, and the answer is no. I do not have anything to do with what is happening to you, but I do know why. Maximus didn't say anything. He just nodded to show he was calm and listening. The changes you are experiencing is because the power that resides deep within you has slowly started seeping out, is providing you with energy, which in turn is making you stronger, faster, and more resilient. The power owing to my lineage. Maximus asked uncertainly. The voice answered, It would seem so. In any case, it has existed within you from birth. The most logical explanation is that you inherited it, but as you are unaware of your parentage, I cannot explain further. But it appears that finally, this energy is able to be released due to your training. I've been training my whole life. So why now? The voice let out an exasperated sound that was almost like a growl. Maximus didn't recognize it, but he knew it was annoyed. I was referring to your other training. The one with the sword, the voice explained. The training for the sword. The meditations and all that other inner will crap that Achilles was making him do to help control the sword's flow of energy. But he thought none of that was working. He was no closer to making his sword light up when he wanted it to, but now the voice was telling him that it was channeling his inner strength to upgrade his body. All this was starting to make Max's head hurt. "Boy, concentrate," the voice ordered. "I did not risk speaking to you again to clear your doubts. There is something much greater you must worry about. I have a message for Athena." Well, this is new, Maximus thought to himself. "You have a message for the goddess?" he asked. "But didn't you explicitly tell me to not reveal your existence to anyone?" "And that is still a priority," the voice emphasized. "But the situation is dangerously familiar for me to hold my tongue. It must be the fates that led me here to witness this." Maximus could not comprehend what was being said, but it was evident from the tone that the voice was dead serious. "So what's the message then?" he asked. The voice took a few seconds to answer. "Athens will fall." "What?" Maximus cried in shock. "You want me to tell the Queen of Athens a city that has been called impenetrable will fall? A city that is protected by the Aegis Wall and has been never breached in 1,000 years is vulnerable to attack? I'm sorry, but I'm going to need a bit more than that. It is not completely comprehensible to me as well, but the similarities are too strange to ignore, and I for one do not believe in coincidences," it said. "Still not making a lot of sense here, big guy," Maximus persisted. "A long time ago, so long ago that most have forgotten a kingdom was reduced to ashes, and now by some cosmic coincidence it is happening again," the voice said. "The signs are the same, the Treaty of Peace, an event that ensures that all the major leaders are in one place, and the final piece was revealed to me through your letter." Maximus was trying to make sense of the confusing information being disclosed to him. "An event," he said. "You mean the festival? And information from the letter? You mean how Ares' hasn't forces have not retreated?" "No," the voice responded. "The weather." Maximus recalled the letter which mentioned heavy storms preventing further scouting. "You think bad weather is the final sign?" "The storm is a lie," the voice said. "It is merely a haze created to hide the forces within it." Maximus was not getting any of this. "You think Ares is hiding his army inside the storm, but that's impossible. Hiding there would only weaken his troops." This was a fact Maximus knew very well firsthand. He had been stuck in bad storms during a mission while he was in the army. The weather proved to be an adversary on its own. The muddy terrain made transportation near impossible. The rains drenched the equipment, making it impossible to use. Not to mention the spread of diseases became very common as well. Any army that came out would be in no fighting condition. "You do not understand. It is as I said before. The storm is a lie. Even though the rains and fog seem thick on the outside, the inside that is the very center of the storm is hollow," the voice elaborated. "You mean it's like a donut?" Max queried. "I do not recognize that instrument," the voice replied. "You've never had a... never mind. So it's like a well with the storm acting as its walls," deduced Maximus. "Precisely," the voice replied. Maximus couldn't believe what he was hearing. But if all this was true, Ares and his forces were much closer to Athens than everyone assumed. Wait, there's still one thing you haven't considered. If what you said is true, why haven't they already attacked? All the Minervian commanders have been back for days now, Maximus asked. Perhaps they believed that attacking during the festival would be more advantageous, the voice answered. Maximus shook his head and said no way. Once the festival starts, Athens will be filled with countless tourists and even important ambassadors from other countries. Attacking then would mean risking making these countries enemies as well. Ares is not dumb enough to do that. The voice paused for a few seconds and said, I had not considered that. I am surprised though, child. You are not as ignorant as you present yourself to be. Isn't that just a fancy way of saying I'm not as dumb as I look, Maximus thought to himself. And if that is the case, then perhaps they are waiting for something else, the voice said. All this is under an assumption that Ares is able to control the weather, Maximus said skeptically. He might not be able to, child, but I am certain about the identity of his master, said the voice. Max's eyes widened. Did that mean the voice knew who was pulling Ares' strings? You know who Ares is working for? No answer. Come on, tell me, he shouted again. Still silence followed. Are you still there? He shouted into the darkness, hearing no reply but his echo. On the outskirts of Athens, just a few miles away from the city walls, a magnificent creature began to descend. The beast was pearl white and seemed to glow against the dark night sky. As it landed, it folded its pair of enormous wings and trotted to a stop on the grassy plains. It was a horse, a large, white, magnificent horse with wings that stretched out longer than its body. It was called the Pegasus. The Pegasus was much more than a flying horse. It was an immortal beast with great magical properties which was believed to have been uncontrollable for eons. That is, until the man riding on top of it came along and tamed it. But the taming of the great beast was not even close to the greatest feat he had accomplished. Once the Pegasus had come to a complete stop, the man stepped off it and let the creature feed on some well-deserved grass. A man was watching the entire scene unfold before him from atop a tiny hill. But this was no ordinary mortal but Hermes, the messenger god. He had been waiting for the arrival of this man for a while. In a matter of seconds, Hermes had left the hill at an astounding speed and was now standing a few feet behind the man. As the man turned around, the messenger god said, "You're late, Perseus." Perseus greeted the god with a smirk. "What's the hurry, Hermes? Athens isn't going anywhere. You should have arrived days ago," Hermes pointed out, not really mad or surprised. He had known the hero for a while now, and punctuality was not one of his strengths, but he had dozens of other qualities to make up for it. "Arrive early. For what, mate?" Perseus said with a laugh. "The festival only starts tomorrow." "We were hoping to get the job done before the festival began, so as to avoid complications," Hermes said. Perseus turned and looked at the sky. He was extremely tall and perfectly built. His oval face bore strikingly handsome features. His dirty blonde hair was pushed back due to the flying revealing his bright green eyes. His gaze was fixed at the far end of the sky. To the northwest of Athens, a massive storm was brewing. It looked like any other ordinary storm, but Perseus knew it housed things far worse than a few drops of rain. "Oh, but I want to see the festival. They are quite fun, you know," he said. "Besides, it seems you'll be getting what you want one way or the other." His gaze was still fixed on the storm. Hermes followed the hero's eyes and knew what he was talking about. "It is not about what I want, my friend, but what our benefactor wants," Hermes said. "But you are right. If you fail, then the storm reaches Athens." Perseus was not happy to hear this. "Has he lost so much faith in me that I require a backup plan?" Hermes almost laughed at hearing this. "Oh, my dear Perseus, you misunderstand. You are the backup plan. Ares was not supposed to fail. What we have there is an ultimatum," he said as he eyed the storm. "I've seen the war god's force," Perseus said. "Athena won't be so easily subdued. It's going to take something extraordinary to take down the Aegis." Hermes wore a grim look on his face. "You know as well as I do that he will find a way." Perseus threw a look of disgust at the messenger god. "Do you think I want this? It might come as a surprise to you, but I'm quite fond of the world the way it is. Things are a lot more peaceful than before. Business is booming and everything I do is to keep it that way," Hermes insisted. "The last thing I want is Athens to be reduced to ashes. He wants the old inventor alive, and if you don't deliver him, Ares will, and no one wants that, which is why you must not fail." Perseus went over to the Pegasus and mounted the beast. Before he took to the skies, he turned to Hermes and said with a smirk, "Have I ever?" This has been a chapter from Book 2 of the new World Odyssey Series, The Legions of Athena. Links to the books in the bio. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this chapter, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. See you in the next chapter.